What's up, guys? My name is Miles.
And my name is Fez.
And this is The Commodity. And today we're reacting to how geography doomed the Philippines. This video was suggested to us by Golden Boy JK.
Got him.
And I'm not JK and you. His name's Golden Boy JK. So thank you so much for the suggestion. We truly appreciate it. Guys, if you want to shout out like Golden Boy JK got, and you want to see us react to a video that you want to see us react to, then click on the link in our description. It takes you over to our Discord. You can throw the links to the videos you want us to look at in the Discord.
Yeah. Click at the Discord.
So we reacted to a video about the weather that you guys had recently in the Philippines. And, you know, we gave our thoughts and prayers out to you guys. I hope you all are recovering well. We've seen previous videos as well of, you know, the Philippines going through these natural disasters, and you guys just keep a huge smile on your face the whole time. You push through it, and I respect that a lot. I can't imagine having to go through it commonly like that. Yeah. And you guys are
stay positive and stuff like that.
It's insane, and that inspires me. That when I have a bad day and think about something like that, how can you call it a bad day?
Right.
You know?
I mean, you're still above ground.
Right.
You got a tummy ache, you know, whatever the case may be, but it could be always worse.
Yeah. So you guys are inspiring. Thank you so much. We truly appreciate it. Again, thank you, Golden Boy JK. Before we hop into this video, if you would, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. It truly, really helps us out getting these videos out to more people. We have a trip planned to Malaysia in a couple of months, and we're trying to hit 100,000 subscribers before we get there. So please click that subscribe button and the bell notification icon. That way you guys can stay informed when we do post, and you can travel along with us via phone, laptop, computer, or TV. It's going to be awesome.
I'm so excited.
I would love for you guys to click that subscribe button and come along with us on the journey. If you're from the Philippines, comment down below where you live in the Philippines. And if you're not from the Philippines, comment down below
where do you live.
Let's go ahead and hop in and check this out.
100,000 subscribers. Come on, guys. You can help us out. Plus, it'll be entertaining. It'll be a lot more entertaining when we're actually moving about.
Yeah.
Moving about.
This is the Philippines. As you can see, it is made up of a bunch of islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, over 7,000 to be specific. Being an archipelago of islands by the equator sure means it's tropical, but does that make it a paradise?
That's gorgeous.
I'm here to say that its geography, nature, and planet Earth has doomed the Philippines into being one of the hardest places to develop. Well, maybe not doomed per se, as the Philippines is still growing rapidly economically and population-wise.
That it is.
But the geography sure does not help it. What could be wrong with its location and climate to make the Philippine Islands destined to a life of pain? And how badly has geography hurt it in the past? Will the Philippines ever be able to escape its physical struggles? Funnily enough, in a video about pure geography, I'm going to talk about the demographics and history of the Philippines first, as they are truly important to understand the story of the nation. The Philippines is a very interesting place, being a mix of Southeast Asian, Austronesian, and Spanish cultures, with a little bit of American mixed in.
American Jollibee?
It's not American.
I mean, would it be that wouldn't be considered American?
Well, I think they're talking about the style of eatery it is, because it's a fast food, very American-esque style.
Gotcha.
Like, you know, like drive-throughs.
Because all I think of when I think of Jollibee, aside from their fantastic Chicken Joy, is the Philippines.
All I think about is the. I thought you were going to say the spaghetti.
I think we only have like 2 in Texas.
Yeah, and one's in like
only
Austin
like 15
or Houston
in the United States.
Which that could have changed recently.
You can't really call it American. Those are beautiful.
But I think but what I think they're saying American, it's very like American.
It's westernized.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two. The first people groups to inhabit the Philippines were the Austronesians, likely sailing over from what is now Taiwan. These early Filipinos were mostly tribal hunter-gatherers and warrior societies. But look at the Philippines. It's just a bunch of islands. These early humans did not develop as a single cohesive group simply because they weren't connected. There was Chinese influence, Hindu influence, and Islamic influence spreading to different islands at different times.
I want to make an argument to that, because he said that they're different because they're not together. Native Indians in the United States, there were thousands of tribes, even next to each other, but they were not together, and it had nothing to do with distance. It just had to do with different people.
Well, no, what he's saying is like a certain group of people from a country over here at one time that might not have actually been a country or something established yet. They got on their boats and they came here, and then somebody over here came.
No,
here,
what he's saying is,
but they never knew each other. They weren't together.
well, that's what I'm saying. Like, he's saying that people that developed the Austronesians came over, but they didn't connect with other people within the country because they were not close to each other. And this is probably predating, like, well, I guess it wouldn't predate boats, but it predated them being able to just venture out like that. That's the way I'm taking it.
Well, right. I'm taking it like they couldn't or just didn't care to travel out to the other islands.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is they didn't. It's not so much just because they're different islands. I'm saying it, even if they were all connected, they still probably wouldn't have connected with other people.
Right. Okay. So your argument is they still would have been different.
Yeah, because, like I said, the native Indians in the U.S. could probably shake hands. Now, they did probably develop trades and stuff like that, but they were still vastly different, spoke different languages. Like in Texas alone, there was like 50 different tribes that spoke all different languages. So
this version of the Philippines was a jumble of cultures and identities.
Oh, wow.
The Manila, Cebu, Lucos, and Sulu, just to name a few. But something was brewing in Europe at the same time, and the Spanish decided to sail all the way around the world in search of gold and God. Ferdinand Magellan used this treaty to claim all of the islands in the Philippines for Spanish rule, and well, they got it. Existing tribes were now put into Spanish towns mainly to convert them to Christianity, and it worked. The Philippines nowadays is over 90% Christian, making it the only major Christian nation in Asia. And yes, there are plenty of revolts against Spanish rule, but there are no widespread revolts across the country, only small ones from individual groups at a time. But the people living under Spanish rule were still lacking an identity, other than all being Christian now. After Latin America declared independence, there was a spike of immigration to the Philippines. The Spanish term Filipino was shifted to mean everyone living in the islands instead of just the Spanish immigrants. Thus, a new identity
South
was
America
born,
declared
and a shared
independence.
identity could mean a shared revolution.
that's a weird way to
The
say
Philippine
that.
Revolution took place 2 years before Spain and the USA had a war, and the revolution succeeded in making the first Philippine Republic.
We watched a video
until
on
the
that.
Americans invaded a year later. Under this rule, Tagalog became the official language of the islands, furthering a shared identity. Then during World War II, the Japanese invaded, fought a war, then left. And now the Philippines was truly, for the first time, united and
like a
free.
black eye.
The post-colonial period was full of dictators, coups, and insurgencies. But nowadays, it is more or less stable. For now, because as I mentioned, the geography of this land is cursed, and it's only a matter of time before it steps in. Throughout the history of the nation, I talked a lot about this shared Philippine identity. That's because the Philippines has both simultaneously a very strong identity and a very weak one. Obviously, in the modern day, under the Philippine Republic, today's residents have a shared national background. They also have a semi-shared geography and are the only real Christians in their region, so in theory the Filipino people are fairly united, but looking at their demographics shows another story. From the mishmash of various tribes and cultures, the Philippines now has over 180 ethno-linguistic groups. In ethnic...
With that being said, I feel like they're all pretty united still.
Yeah, of
At
course.
least from what we've seen, Filipinos are very nice people.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
they all get along.
I feel like he skipped a lot of history.
I do too.
Like, he didn't even mention us being a part of their country.
Right.
map of the Philippines can show you the nature of the problem. Every group is classified as being indigenous or non-indigenous and Moro or non-Moro, with the Moro peoples being the Muslim majority groups. The Moros comprise 5% of the population, mainly in the south. The indigenous peoples are found in the interior of the islands, but are spread pretty evenly throughout the country. And the non-indigenous, non-Moro peoples, also called the Christianized groups, are found by the coasts all throughout the nations, making up 87% of the population.
That's odd.
It is overwhelming how many ethnic groups are found in the islands, but some examples are, for the Moros, the Sulu and Palawan people, indigenous, the Lumad and Igorot, and Christianized, the Cebuano, Tagalog, and Ilocano people. Of course, this many ethnic groups means a ton of languages, and the Philippines has around 150. There wasn't even an official language until 1987 when Tagalog, later becoming
We still don't
Filipino,
have
was
a
designated
official
so.
language in the U.S.
And even though over half the population speaks either Tagalog or Cebuano, only Tagalog and English are actually taught in schools nationwide. Filipino is the language of the people, and English is the language of business in the nation, but neither are spoken by a majority of people, and that's exactly the problem. There is no one language that everyone speaks.
I thought that, so at least everybody that we've had reach out to us or comment says that the majority do speak English. They're taught in English.
Yeah, he literally said that in his video. That they're educated.
Right, but I thought he just said that.
But no, but then he just said that they don't.
There is no one language that everyone speaks, not even close. So regional identities are extremely noticeable in the nation and are sometimes preferred to the national identity. Being physically connected would boost their national identity, of course, but there is a huge sea in between the different ethnic groups. So the Philippines is bound to be culturally separated forever. And literally too. The Philippines is going to be separated forever. The Philippines is, after all, a chain of islands, but so are plenty of other nations. Why is the Philippines specifically doomed? It's fairly simple. It is this very geography that has kept the Filipinos separated, not just through the islands, but through its terrain and climate too. The Philippines is made up of around 7,600
I don't like how he
islands,
says they're doomed.
Yet only 11 make up 95%
I don't either.
of the landmass, with 2...
Doomed sounds like a very negative word.
Yeah, and they've been around for a long
negative
time.
word. Yeah, the Philippines has been around for forever.
Yeah.
So
As long as those islands have been there.
I would not consider you guys doomed.
No, neither would I.
So I don't agree with that.
It's his words, not ours.
Yeah.
Luzon and Mindanao making up a third. Like its cultures, it's very hard to talk about a single feature that all these islands share. Most of them are mountainous, mainly along the eastern side, running with the Philippine Trench. But many singular spicy mountains stand alone on different islands. These mountains further separated the Philippine tribes, creating pockets of distinct cultures. Humans generally don't like to make civilizations in valleys, plateaus, and mountains, unless of course they are right by rivers, of which the Philippines has a distinct lack of. The longest river in the nation is only 500 kilometers long on its largest island, Luzon, which compared to most other major rivers is child's play. Therefore, in order for the native people groups and later the colonizers to interact with each other, they would need to either travel along the coasts or somehow make the journey through the highlands of the center, and the journey was not easy. Because the Philippines sits near the equator, it is mostly made up of overgrown tropical rainforest and swampy mangroves along the coast.
Which is so gorgeous.
Although in the northern highlands there is a small section of temperate land. So the easiest thing was to develop on the coasts, meaning a lack of infrastructure in the interior where most of the farming and mining of the nation can actually be done.
And I thought it was odd at first whenever he said, I didn't think it was odd. I just thought it was cool, I guess. It was interesting that he said that the majority of the Christians live in the coastal regions, but then I thought about it. And
that's where the majority of population...
Well, 95% of their population is Christianity, and majority of the people live on coastal
and that's
regions.
like the entire world. The majority of population lives
That's what I'm saying.
coastal.
It hit me like 2 minutes after I said it.
Yeah.
That's most of their
it's an obvious statement is what that is.
It also means a lack of a highway or railway system to connect the nation together, but I guess that could have been obvious. So the physical geography from the hot, humid jungles, valleys, and plenty of islands did not help unify the nation, but divide it apart. And still, that's not even the biggest geographic challenge the Philippines faces.
I feel like this
Let
isn't
me give
fair.
you a small lesson in Earth science. When two tectonic plates rub past each other, the relatively small force compared to the plate creates a relatively massive force when you live on that same plate. and there's no more notorious tectonic activity than in the Ring of Fire. This is a ring of tectonic plates around the Pacific Ocean, which has created ring-shaped patterns of earthquakes, mountains, and volcanoes. The Philippines sits right in the middle of the Ring of Fire, getting absolutely shafted by tectonic activity. Earthquakes in the Philippines
happens
are
in
a regular
California,
occurrence.
too.
Right.
On average, the nation receives a magnitude 7 earthquake yearly. Not only do deaths happen, but it
That's
also costs
intense.
billions
that's
and
intense.
billions of dollars to repair the costs done by the earthquake. The strongest so far occurred in 1976 near the Moro Gulf. Sure, there are plenty of other regions who deal with earthquakes, but there's simply more coming at the Philippines than those other nations. Second, because
that
of its
Chile?
tropical location with an ocean to the west, the Philippines has a regular typhoon season, destroying many coastal settlements and development. The worst one being Typhoon Haiyan in
Listen,
2013, costing $2 billion in damage. And the 10 other costliest typhoons all happened within the last 10 years.
You know what's crazy though? So that was $2 billion worth of damage. So we had tornadoes come in, I want to say it was 2 years ago. We had just moved in together.
Right.
And I was over at my ex-wife's house, and a tornado hit there and one hit in Preston Hollow, Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
That caused $2 billion worth of damage.
Yeah.
That's crazy. That those are the same. And it doesn't, I mean, it looked intense in the area that the tornado hit, but the amount of damage looks drastically less.
Right.
So that kind of blows my mind.
It is not a cheap or healthy occurrence for a nation to have to rebuild itself every year. The seismic activity and low-lying land also causes mudslides and flooding, destroying even more land. Forest fires rage on yearly in the dense rainforests, prone to lightning from the heavy rain. But hey, at least these mountains won't cause any issues.
There's so much negativity now behind this video. Like at first it started out
Volcano.
very like educational, and now it's just gotten so negative.
It's like finding all the negative things you can
Right.
about a place. Yeah.
I feel like we
natural
need to-
disasters suck. We get it.
I feel like we need to react to another video in a couple of days, like
Positively.
the most positive things in the Philippines.
Yeah.
Volcanoes,
This
though,
is-
are one of the Philippines' biggest threats. There have been 2 literal extinction events from the Philippine volcanoes before humans walked on this earth. The deadliest and most infamous being the eruption of Mount Pinatubo in 1991. 20,000 people needed to be evacuated just from the lahar flow alone, a mix of hot ash and mud flooding the land. There is massive destruction in the surrounding
That is
area and
insane.
ash
Yeah.
coverage which reached Thailand. And there have been hundreds of other eruptions like it throughout history. The early people groups of the Philippines were not nearly as prepared as the modern Philippines is now, so whenever a major natural disaster happened, it could have literally ended their culture. And when you live in this region, a major natural disaster is going to happen pretty often. As the Earth's climate changes at a rapid pace from human activity, some of these major natural disasters will only happen more often.
Which
The
I can
typhoons,
understand that.
Forest fires, droughts, and flooding
I mean, we
will
noticed
only
the
speed
difference,
up.
too.
Right.
Luckily, earthquakes and volcanoes are fairly unaffected by climate change, which have generally been the worst disasters in Philippine history. Their main 2 issues from climate change seem to be too much water and too little water. Water is probably the most important resource on this planet, specifically fresh water. All the food we eat needs water to be produced. Currently, the Philippines has a dry season and a wet season. In the future, there will only be a drier dry and wetter wet season. During the dry season, where 1/3 of the Filipino population works in agriculture, water will be scarce, with droughts predicted to ravage the nation. But during the wet season, it's expected that extreme rainfall in the north and center will essentially flash flood many settlements. There will be extreme days with less than 2.5 millimeters of rain, and some with over 300 millimeters of rain.
I feel like, you know, obviously this is just a guessing game though. Like
No, I mean, there's probably
yes,
scientific
well, there is scientific
evidence.
but for the temperature, for example, there was a study that came out that said the temperature is rising 1/10 of a degree every year.
Right.
So, I mean, yeah, in 100 years, that's pretty drastic. In 50 years, that's pretty drastic.
Right.
But I feel like there's going to be adaptation
To a certain
with
extent,
it.
yes. But I also think that just like what we had to do with the ozone layer, so aerosol cans are illegal now in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And most countries don't use aerosol anymore because that's what was really eating up the ozone. There's a chemical in the aerosol cans. So now they use a different chemical to push to atomize the sprays. So in our lifetime, in your lifetime, my lifetime, we're seeing, so it was the most opened up ozone had ever been, and it should be healed within, I think, the next 10 to 15 years.
Right.
So if we can do that, I think that we can learn that. I mean, it's funny how we were able to do that, but for some reason we can't figure out how to get rid of plastics and stuff like that.
Right.
But I still think that we will educate ourselves, hopefully, to fix these issues, because in 20, 30, 40 years, it's going to be very noticeable that there's some major issues.
Right.
But yes, I do think that countries like the Philippines and like these, Indonesia and these areas are going to feel the worst because they are islands.
Yeah.
And they probably have because they have water all the way around them. So they're going to be hit from 360 degrees.
Right. But like you and I just both agreed on, the Philippines is not doomed.
No. Well, if humans don't change, then yes, we're all doomed.
Right.
Not just the Philippines. We are doomed.
Yeah.
But if humans change the way that they live, which eventually I think we will, because it's going to get to the point where we have to.
I agree.
Will it be too late for countries like the Philippines or the United States or any of these countries? I hope not.
I hope not too.
So,
Temperatures will also rise around 3 degrees, making some days reach 35 degrees in the Philippines, where the average temperature is already around 26 degrees and stays relatively the same annually. The water won't just fall on them, it'll rise up too. Sea levels are predicted to rise around half a meter in the Philippines. The Philippines is already extremely volatile to any change in sea level due to being an extremely coastal nation because they couldn't live in the centers of the islands. The Philippines will have a future where water is both in short supply and their worst enemy. The Philippines is such a unique area of the world. It doesn't really fit in anywhere. It's not entirely Asian, not entirely Western, and not entirely Austronesian. It is a blend of all these cultures plus significant Hindu and Islamic influences to make a society like no other. Unfortunately, Mother Nature already had that same plan, making the Philippines an archipelago of separated islands covered in mountainous rainforests to stop the early humans from interacting with each other, and with disaster after disaster costing billions and countless lives every year, the modern Philippines still struggles with fighting nature. They will only have to keep fighting more as climate change keeps sending more and more disasters their way. Yet, the Philippines have prevailed through foreign rule and all of these disasters before, so maybe the nation isn't doomed, just at least cursed by geography.
That's a better statement than they're doomed.
yeah. Yeah, there's ways to say it that's not so. I mean,
yeah, the video was titled "How Geography Doomed the Philippines," but I did not know that
I feel
it was
like
gonna be
geography,
this negative.
like they've had, well, I wouldn't use the term doomed, but I would say that they have one of the hardest, like that whole region of the world, Southeast Asia, have one of the hardest, like, day-to-day lives because
Right.
of climate.
Right.
Because,
But
I
to
mean,
say
we
they're
get our
doomed, meaning
fair
like-
share, but not like that.
Right, because when you say something is doomed, that means there is no hope.
Right. I mean, I hope there's hope.
Exactly. And if we hope, then it's not doomed.
You're dumb.
There's no hope if it's doomed.
Yeah,
So, you
yeah.
know, like,
Guys, we don't think you're doomed.
we don't think you're doomed.
I think y'all have challenges.
Yeah.
Like, way more challenges than we have.
You got a good engagement rate on here. Let's see. I never realized this living here in the Philippines all my life, but seeing natural disasters almost monthly is apparently not a normal thing globally. As a Filipino, I would argue that it's not actually geography.
They're saying geographically.
Yeah. That doomed us.
The
It's the
actual
lack of planning
geography
and
that doomed us.
structure. I wouldn't disagree with that. The structure.
Yeah.
to maximize the geography.
Philippines didn't have much shared identity back in the past. Modern science has proven that almost all the tribe and ethnicities in the Philippines speak the same branch of Austronesian languages in the Philippines. Languages I myself, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I experienced typhoon.
As a resident Filipino here on this channel, I agree with these points, and so I propose that Vietnam, Cambodia, and all other Southeast Asian countries behind the Philippines pay us a tribute for blocking all typhoons over the past millennium. Also, you butchered mostly all Filipino words, but I forgive you.
Edit, this is a joke. Very nice.
Right. Yeah, but everybody in the comments, again, is positive.
Yeah, that's
It's
what I
just
love
another
about the
typhoon,
Philippines, man.
Another
There's
year, another flood. Other countries drowning. Our country's drowning again. Did you guys feel an earthquake or something? How many times have they rebuilt this place? I mean, that's awesome that you guys can
it just rolls off your
Right.
You're just like, let's go again next year.
And I guess that's why I kind of got a little offended at first whenever
When he
started
kept on
saying
saying it,
doom.
I was like,
I
man,
started getting offended. Like I sincerely, if it would have kept on, at one point I wanted to pause it and kind of be like, hey, I don't want to do this video.
Yeah.
But
I just think it's his choice of words. It's
Yeah.
not. I mean, the video itself is pretty good.
it was very
I
informative.
feel like some of the early history was left out.
Mm-hmm. But
I mean,
most
he
of the
kind of
points-
captioned it. Yeah.
But most of the points were valid.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean,
Except
it's
for
hard to
being
rebuild after $2 billion worth of damage. I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
But guys, this was actually, to me, I actually enjoyed the video as a whole.
I did. Yeah.
Choice of words could have been different, but as a whole, this was a great video. But guys, if you enjoyed our video, please hit the like button. If you want to see our future videos and our travels to Malaysia and the Philippines, and we do have a trip coming up soon, and we're trying to hit 100,000 subscribers before we head out. Hit the subscribe button and the bell notification. And if you want to support us directly, hit that join button. And with that being said,
My name's Miles.
my name is Fez.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Peace.
Out.